Hey gamers, so you want to understand C++? Well, I hope you're ready, because I'm about to absorb C++ in your very being. Before I get into specifics, let's just print our first line of code. So for these quotations right here, you can put any value you want, and you would output it just by doing this. Then you could rename it to whatever you want. Let's say, for example, I want to name this cat. And you just output it now. Boom! You print your first line of code in C++. Now on the string, so we just outputted our first line of code. But before I outputted anything, I said that you had to put our sentence in quotations. Why is that? And it's because of something called data types. And don't worry, bro, it looks a lot worse than it is. Chars. Now all chars is a data type that is used to represent a single character. So for example, letters are great examples of this. A, B can also be a char, C can also be a char. It encompasses one singular thing. But this isn't just limited to letters. You can also apply this to numbers. But just don't take my word for it. Let's go ahead and take a quick look to see if one actually works. And boom, it printed it right next to it. Meaning that no matter if it's a 1, an A, even a special character, as long as it's one singular thing, you can put it in a char. Typically with strings in C++, we usually use quotations to denote and let the compiler or program know that we're calling this a string. Well, that's cool and all, but what is a string? All a string is that it's a bunch of chars put together. The fancy way of saying this, or the way that you would hear it put in computer science, is that strings are a sequential order of chars, or an array. Well, if you go back to our previous example at the beginning, you'll notice I said that we're gonna enclose this in quotations. And that's because this right here is a string. And you can imagine how practical strings are over chars, especially when you want to write a giant phrase. For example, midnight did not give me enough rations for the latest snowflake video on Midnight Obscura, or something similar. Now on to the three most confused data types that aren't custom structures or pointer related. Ints, doubles, and floats. I think this example might help. Let's say Twin owes me exactly $50 for lunch yesterday, and my bank account, being chopped, I decide to charge them 30% interest. Wow, I know. Not only do I decide to charge him 30% today, but I charge him 30% more every single day he doesn't pay, and it takes Vro 20 days to pay. So how much does Vro owe me before I repossess his existence? So how would we start? Take a few moments and think it out. You don't have to write a formula or anything code related, but just think carefully about what we know. We know the original amount that I charged Twin was $50. We know that the interest per day is 30%. And we know that I charge him 30% more per day that he doesn't pay. And we know that it takes him 20 days to pay. Pause the video and think to yourself, without programming, do you know how much Vro owes me? Alright, since you unpaused, I'm assuming you're ready. Now before we start coding, we need to create a mathematical equation that explains how much money Vro owes me. So let's go based off what we know. We know that Vro owes me $50 today. Now, is the percentage of interest that he owes me going to be multiplied or added? I kind of gave it away, but it's going to be multiplied because it's every single day. Now, the interest is 30%. Cool. However, the interest is not the only thing that's being carried over every single day. It's also the interest plus the base amount I gave him, which is the $50. So it's going to be 1 plus the interest. Now, the amount of days isn't just going to increase the amount that Ro has to pay me by by multiplying it by 20. It's actually upping it to an exponent of 20. Yeah, Ro is cooked. Cool. Now just one more step before we start coding. We need to understand what data type each number is going to be. So what do you think is 50 is going to be? Intuition is probably going to tell you that because 50 is a whole number, it's going to be an int. And you would be right if it wasn't being multiplied to a decimal point. It's not going to be a float either because we want super accurate information. I don't want to lose money to twin. Because of that, it's going to be double. Now, because I kind of give it away, if you're multiplying one thing and it's one data type, it's most likely going to be the same data type of the other one. So we're going to go and say that the interest is also a double. Now what is 20? This one's a bit tricky. Now because it's being upped by the number of days, typically, I don't know about you, but typically I don't measure days in decimal points. I measure it in whole numbers. So in this case, it's because it's going to be a whole number, it's going to be an integer. Exactly. Awesome. We now have everything we need to start coding. So we'll go and say double, and let's call this twin p, twin principal. And we'll name this 50.0 because it's a double. Next, we're going to go ahead and do the exact same thing, but for the interest, and we'll call it twin I for interest. And we're just going to copy it exactly as it is. Boom. Now, we're going to go and say int, and we'll call this days, and 20, boom. And we just follow the equation. Before we start though, what do you think that the data type of the result is going to be? Maybe remember, I want my money from twin, so I'm going to make it a double to make it as accurate as possible. Double, and we'll call it amount owed, and we'll say it's equal to, and we have the equation up there. So it's going to be twin p times 1 plus 0.3 and semicolon. Is this right? Well, no, it's still not to the power of something. We would only get it for 1 day. However, if we wanted to increase it to the power and get it for the 20 days, all we would need to do is just do std, which is just the standard library, and do pow, and we would need to separate the interest by a comma and put the 20. Boom. Alright, that's cool and all, but how do we actually print out how much twin owes me? Well, that's pretty easy in C++. All we have to do is just do std, where std is a standard library in C++, cout, which is going to help us print it out. Now, there's a few ways we can approach this. The way I would recommend approaching this would be amount owed after blank days is blank. So let's do that. Amount owed after, and we'll go and put days, because it won't put it in there. We have to do it manually. And we'll go ahead and put the amount, which is the amount owed. We created that function. std and line, and boom. Now all we have to do is just do G++, which is the compiler I recommend using. The file name, which is f1.cpp, and .o. And all this will do is it will allow us to change the file name to whatever we want that's being outputted. So we'll name it twin. Now to print it out, it's just ./twin. And boom, we got the amount that twin owes me after 20 days is $9,502.48. Bro is absolutely cooked. Put in the comments what I should do to twin if he doesn't pay. See, C++ isn't that bad as long as you learn incrementally.
BLOATCODA everywhere. V syntax is too terrible. Memory management is dumb.
Be gone.
Still better than pointers.
So, what's the scope of this albeit strange course? What this course is: fast-paced, entertaining, practical, and a little bit chopped. What this course isn't: a theory-heavy course that explains the how. Topics are introduced as they're relevant and are specifically tailored to be applicable for most tech fields. I hope to see you in episode 2, and remember, feed your local Interno.